The Tower of London. It's 2020, and this will be one of the most memorable years in the Tower's 1,000-year history.
Lower the drawbridge!
It's already seen more kings,
Richard III,
queens,
and Boleyn,
and famous events than anywhere else in Britain. Now, with exclusive access, we meet the remarkable people keeping the Tower alive during an extraordinary 12 months.
This is the historic moment that we're living in. It will never be like this again.
I ordered a washing machine. He said, we can't find the Tower of London. I said, the marauding peasants of 1381, they found it and they didn't have a sat-nav.
In this episode, it's July and the Tower finally opens after its longest closure in 75 years.
It's a special occasion. We haven't done this before in our lifetimes.
The team pull out all the stops to mark the occasion.
The Tower of London is now open!
And there are tears as the tourists return.
I just feel really happy that we've pulled this off and we're here, we're back. The Tower's back.
This is the Tower of London, up close and personal in a year like no other. It's 8 o'clock in the morning on the 10th of July 2020. A day which will mark the end of an extraordinary period in the Tower's 1,000-year history. In 2 hours' time, the fortress will finally throw open its doors to visitors after 112 consecutive days in lockdown. For Deputy Governor Debbie Whittingham, it couldn't come soon enough.
Right, well, today's the day. Today's opening day, and I'm just a bit nervous. It's one of those mornings that we've never experienced before. You know, to have no visitors and now to pray for lots of visitors. It's, yeah, very apprehensive, but also really excited.
The COVID pandemic forced the Tower to close for the longest period since the Second World War, 75 years ago.
But in the grand scheme of things, the Tower has been here nearly 1,000 years. It's had blips in its existence that it's overcome, and we've overcome another one. So when I see those visitors on the hill getting ready to come in through the gates, it would be very hard not to go and hug the first person that comes through. It really will. Morning, Chief.
Good morning, Mum. How are
To
you?
celebrate the occasion, Debbie and her team are planning a very special reopening ceremony.
You're very early.
I am very early, aren't I?
I'm
I couldn't
shocked.
sleep.
Helping Debbie with the last-minute preparations is Chief Yeoman Warder Pete McGowan.
So, Chief, everybody's in place, knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I met the musicians this morning, saw the sergeant, we walked through exactly what we're going to do.
To welcome the visitors back with a bang, the Tower is literally throwing open its gates. The middle drawbridge at the eastern end of Water Lane will be lowered, while buglers from the Welsh Guards sound a fanfare from the walls.
So, the last bit is positioning of myself, Governor and Chief Warden.
Yeah, just here, this is where we'll be stood
Yeah,
when the guards are here.
yeah,
But we'll move forward with them. When they halt, we halt.
yeah.
All the Tower's top brass will take part.
The whole team that's going to be down here, as well as myself and the governor and the deputy governor and the chief warden, so we're more than normal. But it's going to be something to behold, and we've reversed it. It looks really, really good, and I can't wait to do it.
I've just got to go and get into that uniform now for the first time in a very long time.
Breathing.
Could take me some time. See you later.
See you, take care.
As well as the beefeaters, the Tower's visitors are looked after by uniformed wardens. The chief warden, Nivek Amachand, lives at the Tower alongside the yeoman warders. He's had an early start and is already suited and booted. Later this morning, he'll be standing alongside the governor at the reopening ceremony.
We're all a bit excited, some of us quite nervous, and we're quite ready to welcome those first visitors through the door.
Nivek is responsible for the 1,000-year-old White Tower. This morning, he needs to check that its flag is in tip-top condition for the big day. That means a trip to the roof with veteran warden Orville. This is a part of the tower only a handful of people get to see.
Just stand on the...
I'll get the guide rope.
Nivek and Orville need to inspect the flag for any rips and tears.
We'll have a look, make sure it's not frayed. You know what it's like, if the winds are really high,
Yeah.
it can get really damaged.
Sometimes the flag do get caught up on the top of the pole and sometimes it rips.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be looking nice.
I mean, we've got the professional on it. Orville's the tried and tested man when it comes to the flag.
The flag flies every day of the year, and it was flying all the way through lockdown.
It's one thing for us to see it from here, but it's quite important to know that, you know, people can see it from all the way around. See it from across the river, you know? So we want to make sure it's right. It gives people a sense of security. It harks back to the tower being the consistent amongst everything else that's always changing around us. Everything's changed around this place, but the tower and this flag would have stayed the same. I mean,
Nivek, if you want to step back from it and then I'll
Just have
step
a
back
look
that
at-
way to see
yeah.
how, if there's any damage to it.
of course. I'll go have a look. Or
And then let me know.
Yeah.
Nivek, is that okay?
That looks okay, Orville.
Yeah?
Yeah. Do you want to send it back out? This in itself is history, you know? It's the first time we would have had to check the flag since lockdown.
This is my life. This is what I do. I enjoy wearing this beautiful uniform. When I'm here, you know, to make people happy from all walks of life, that's a great feeling for me.
Oh, we should probably head down to the middle drawbridge for the opening. Up to you.
Nivek and Orville are not the only members of the tower's team anxious to see the return of visitors.
Well, it's opening day, so we've been in lockdown. It's all thankfully coming to an end, and the public are coming back in. So it's quite exciting just to see faces in the tower again, that not my fellow yeoman warders.
Like several of his yeoman warder colleagues, Chris Clawson has spent lockdown living in the tower, in his house on the Casemates.
It's been very strange to start off with. It was amazing. It's sort of almost romantic being locked inside a palace. But that got very boring very quickly. And the place needs to be alive. It's only alive if there are people here.
In 15 minutes, the first visitors will arrive at the tower. Ex-RAF Flight Sergeant Chris will be one of the 7 yeoman warders or beefeaters on duty to greet them and share stories from the tower's incredible history. But after nearly 4 months in lockdown, Chris is a little rusty.
I think today the most important thing for me is to practice my story. We spend so long learning it, so long delivering it, hours and hours every day. I haven't had anybody to tell it to for 4 months.
With the reopening ceremony fast approaching, Chris has a few last-minute checks to make.
So what I'm going to do now, before the drawbridge lowers, is I'm going to check all the ropes, check all the posts, make sure everything's ready.
Coming up, the tower puts on a show for the grand reopening.
Bugles! Sound the rouse!
And it's an emotional morning for Debbie.
I wish people stopped asking me how I feel because the mascara will run in a minute.
It's an historic day for the Tower of London. In a few minutes, the fortress will open for the first time in almost 4 months. To honour the occasion, Chief Yeoman Warder Pete McGarren has donned his red Tudor uniform.
I'm now going to the middle drawbridge because we're going to lower the drawbridge officially before our visitors can come in here. It's a big day. It's probably the most excited I've been since I joined the Royal Air Force Regiment in 1975.
Pete is about to take part in a Tower First, a brand new ceremony signalling to the world that the Tower is open for business. 5 buglers from the Welsh Guards will play a fanfare from the ramparts before the middle drawbridge is lowered.
Just play what seems about right.
In charge of proceedings is Tower Governor Brigadier Andrew Jackson.
It's a special occasion. We haven't done this before in our lifetimes, and the last time the tower reopened after a protracted period was at the end of the Second World War.
The Tower's officers only wear their ceremonial uniforms for very special occasions. Today is the first time that Deputy Governor Debbie Whittingham has worn hers since Prince Charles's official visit in February.
It feels fantastic to be back in uniform, back on duty properly. It's a little snug, if I may say so, after lockdown. But no, really proud moment again to get back into it.
It's been a race against time to get ready for the reopening. Now the tower is gleaming, from the battlements right down to Debbie's spurs.
We've been really pulling all the stops out and getting ready. The last finishing touches were going on last night till about 9:30, and the place looks fantastic. And we're just really excited to be all back together again. We're going to get those visitors back in and bring the tower alive again. Anyway, I must go.
The ceremony has been planned with the tower's usual military precision. But the whole event hinges on a single piece of engineering, the drawbridge itself. Installed in 2014, it is an exact replica of the original 19th century design. It will be lowered by 2 members of the security team. Well, that's the plan anyway. It's an operation fraught with risk.
That drawbridge is not easy to handle. There's a lot of chains. It's not motorised, it's all done manually.
Last night we did just a bit of a check on the mechanism of the drawbridge, which is, not many places have their own drawbridge. I'm really proud of that. Unfortunately, it wasn't working.
But it takes more than a few rusty chains to deter the team.
It took some time, with bits of WD-40 and all sorts of things going off to get it done yesterday. So glad we went through the procedures yesterday to put it all in order for today.
All Pete can do now is hope the drawbridge hasn't seized up again overnight. It's almost 9:45 a.m. In precisely 2 minutes, the ceremony will begin. Once in position, the buglers will play the rouse, a triumphant fanfare calling the tower to action. They'll take their cue from Governor Andrew Jackson.
No, that's marching forward first, so it starts.
But it's down to Pete to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Once the rouse is finished, then go forward and open up, yeah?
All through the fortress, yeoman warders await the signal that the tower is back in business.
I've told them all, get in position, stop. When you halt, we'll all stop, sound the rouse.
Yep. Okay.
Once Pete is happy, he gives the word.
So when you're ready, Sarge.
And the ceremony to reopen the tower can begin.
Fire sector! Quick! March! Escort to the king! Out!
You guys, sound the rouse!
The bugles have just sounded, so I'm just waiting for the first members of the public to arrive. It's quite a nervous time. I didn't think I'd be nervous, but actually I am.
Chief Yeoman Warder, lower the drawbridge!
Lower the drawbridge!
All eyes are on the drawbridge. It takes a grueling 8 minutes to bring it down. All Pete and the team can do is watch and hope nothing goes wrong.
That was the first time we've ever done that ceremony, so I'm a bit gobsmacked. It seems like a bit of a blur, because there were a lot of nerves on my side, and I was just trying to walk in step.
The Tower of London is now opened in preparation for our glorious visitors.
Thank you, Chief. Please carry on.
Over on Tower Green, Chris Clawson is ready and waiting.
I was born for this. I'm just ready for any question. We've been starved of questions for so long. Even those really ridiculous questions that we get sometimes, I wouldn't even mind if it was some of those, just any question.
But before Chris comes face to face with his first visitors, there's just one final ceremony to perform.
Escort to the keys. Inwards, turn. Escort to the keys. Present, arms.
In time-honoured tradition, a yeoman warder is escorted by 4 guardsmen to open the middle tower gate. Today he's also joined by Chief Yeoman Warder Pete, Governor Andrew and Deputy Governor Debbie. They've come to give the tower's first visitors in months a special VIP welcome.
Good morning, welcome to the tower. Thank you. Let's go straight through, please.
Enjoy the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Yeah. You have a lovely day.
Thank you, you too.
Talk to all the yeoman warders in there.
Thank you.
It's been great seeing the kids and that coming this morning. Good morning, Princess. How are you?
Yes. Say good morning. Say good morning.
Good morning. And you've got the crown jewels to yourself.
Yeah.
Enjoy
Good
them.
morning.
But make
Welcome
sure
to
you
the
put
tower.
them back. That's the bit I miss. The interaction with the public and seeing the smiles on the face. Absolutely amazing. Have a great day. It's a great feeling. A few of our staff are quite emotional, which it hasn't shocked me because it is a big moment for us.
Fantastic. You got me going now. That was an emotional moment. It was fantastic. Really good.
You don't get this normally, you know.
I wish people stopped asking me how I feel because this is really a problem. The mascara will run in a minute. I just feel so relieved, really happy that we've pulled this off and we're here. We're back. The tower's back.
It doesn't take long for the public to make their way to Tower Green and Yeoman Warder Chris Clausen.
The Queen's crown, there are 4 pearls. 2 of them are very different because they were Queen Elizabeth I's earrings.
He's soon back in the swing of things.
How gory do you want a gory story?
Really gory.
So, are we sure?
Yeah.
So here, okay, just in this spot here, only 6 people have ever been beheaded. So you think loads and loads of people were killed inside the tower, yeah?
Although the fortress is now open to the public, social distancing means some of the tower's smaller spaces remain off limits. Just a few yards from Chris's post on Tower Green, the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula is still closed to the public. It is the final resting place for many of Henry VIII's victims. Chief Curator Tracy Borman is taking advantage of the peace and quiet to explore the fate of one of them.
It's an ideal time to be here because you really get a sense of the place when you get to see it on your own.
The chapel was built exactly 500 years ago in 1520 by King Henry VIII in honour of his first wife, Catherine of Aragon.
This chapel has always held a really special place in my heart, and I feel incredibly privileged to be here. It's got such a rich history, and you really get a sense of that when you're lucky enough to be here when nobody else is. One of the people buried here is John Fisher, a famous Catholic bishop who'd served the royal family for years, but made an enemy of Henry VIII and found himself a prisoner here in the tower.
65-year-old John Fisher was the Bishop of Rochester and a hugely popular figure. He was a Roman Catholic, and he spoke out against religious changes brought in by King Henry VIII. In 1534, the king split the country from Catholic Rome. He created the Church of England and made himself, not the Pope, the head of it. Members of the church were required to swear an oath of allegiance to Henry. But all of this was too much for Catholic Fisher.
Fisher refused to acknowledge Henry as the supreme head of the new Church of England. Well, sometime in April 1534, Fisher was asked to take the new oath. He refused, was arrested, and charged with treason.
The elderly bishop was brought to the Tower of London and locked up in the Bell Tower. Fisher would spend the last year of his life in one of its stone cells.
Conditions in Fisher's cell were deliberately unpleasant. The authorities wanted to put pressure on him to take the oath, recognising Henry as supreme head of the church, We know that Fisher just had a thin straw mattress, no other furnishings, and that his jailers even deprived him of food. Fisher wrote a letter to Thomas Cromwell, Henry's chief advisor, in which he complained bitterly about his treatment. And I have a copy of his letter here. I have neither shirt nor suit, nor yet other clothes, but that be ragged and rent so shamefully. But my diet also, God knoweth how slender it is at times. I decay forthwith, and fall into coughs and diseases.
But Fisher had the courage of his convictions. No matter how badly he was treated, he refused to accept Henry's new Church of England. Finally, after 14 agonizing months, he was put on trial, found guilty of treason, and condemned to death by beheading.
On the 22nd of June 1535, Fisher was taken out of his cell to face his final moments. But instead of the short walk to Tower Green, where high-ranking prisoners were put to death privately, he was dragged the long walk up to Tower Hill, where commoners were executed. It was the final insult for a man who had already suffered so much.
When today's visitors enter the tower, few of them realise they're passing directly beneath Bishop Fisher's cell.
Hello there, welcome to the tower.
This morning's visitors are receiving a warm welcome from one of the 7 beefeaters on duty. But under new post-lockdown rules, guests don't join a group tour of the tower with a yeoman warder. Instead, they now follow a one-way system, meeting beefeaters stationed along the route. On her way to take up her post on Tower Green is yeoman warder A.J. Clark.
It feels absolutely amazing. The whole atmosphere of the tower has just completely changed. Don't get me wrong, we have loved the peace and the quiet for a couple of weeks, but to have the tower back with different voices, different noises, it's really, really, really nice.
That's the last remaining timber-framed Tudor residence in the City of London.
The new system means visitors get more one-to-one time with AJ.
Henry VIII had that rebuilt for his second bride, Anne Boleyn. Then he gifted it to his 4th wife, Queen Catherine Howard. Yeah. So he gave it to her as a gift and then held a prisoner in there. Cheeky monkey. Yeah, we do give a little bit of a performance, especially when the kids are involved, so give them a little bit of drama and excitement. And he got his axe and he actually whacked her right on the shoulder. But she took off running.
While younger visitors soak up bloody tales of executions hidden away inside the tower, Chief Curator Tracy Borman is investigating one tourist attraction which thankfully no longer takes place: public executions.
This is a contemporary illustration of an execution on Tower Hill, and it's quite staggering to see the crowds. There isn't an inch of pavement not covered with spectators. It's like the football matches of its day. One of the most infamous, and indeed one of the bloodiest executions at Tower Hill, took place more than 300 years ago in 1685. We know that hundreds of people came along to witness the execution of a man who dared to rebel against the monarchy itself. That man was the illegitimate son of King Charles II. He was known as the Duke of Monmouth.
Monmouth was the eldest of King Charles II's many illegitimate children, a good-looking, popular figure and a respected war hero. When Charles died and his Catholic brother James II came to the throne, Monmouth tried to grab it for himself, but his rebellion went disastrously wrong. King James II offered a reward of £5,000 for his nephew's capture. 2 days later, the Duke was arrested and charged with high treason. On the 13th of July, 1685, Monmouth was brought under armed guard up the River Thames to the Tower of London.
I can only imagine what Monmouth must have been feeling as he approached the tower. Here was a young man who had been raised to be very conscious of his royal birth. He'd spent years planning to take the throne, and then it was all over.
Even though King James was his uncle, Monmouth's punishment would be brutal.
The fate that was dealt out to Monmouth really speaks volumes about James II. He's willing to put his own nephew to death. Blood isn't thicker than water in the royal family, but it also sends out quite a stark signal to James's new subjects. He is not going to tolerate any threat to his rule.
King James wasted no time in dealing with his rebellious nephew. After just 2 days in the Tower, Monmouth was taken the short distance to Tower Hill, where huge crowds gathered for the grim spectacle. Coming up, Tracy discovers the gruesome details of Monmouth's final moments.
You can only imagine the sheer horror of the scene.
And Raven Master Chris Scaife is forced to take drastic action to stop 3 petty thieves. It's early afternoon at the Tower. Just a few hours ago, the fortress opened for the first time since the start of lockdown. It's Deputy Governor Debbie Whittingham's job to make sure everything is running smoothly, and she has a keen eye for detail.
Any selfies?
I haven't done any selfies, no.
It's a good job, really, because you've lost a button off your uniform.
With some buildings still closed due to social distancing, the team are keen to open as much of the tower's outdoor space as possible. One area which is usually closed off to the public is the space outside the Queen's house. It's a chance for people to see this historic building up close, rather than from the other side of Tower Green. The armed guard is a clue to its importance. This is the residence of the Constable, the Queen's official representative at the Tower. Yeoman Warder Chris Clawson is taking up his post outside the front door.
There's lots of myths about various bits of the Queen's house. For instance, there's a sash window here, supposedly the oldest sash window left in the City of London.
Built in the 1500s, the timber-fronted building is only one of a handful to have survived the Great Fire of London. It was here that Guy Fawkes was interrogated after the gunpowder plot was uncovered 400 years ago.
You're walking far too quickly, ladies. Come on, you've got the place to yourselves, just stroll.
And just like the building itself, the area outside the Queen's house is packed full of history.
So, for instance, where you're stood, OK, nobody knows that there used to be a footpath from here to the chapel. This all used to be gardens. So they have a path that led straight from the Queen's house, straight into the chapel, so they wouldn't have to walk over any uneven ground.
It's not only yeoman warders like Chris who are glad to see visitors back at the Tower. From inquisitive pets like Riley the cat to Cyril the squirrel, the resident animals are keen to get in on the act. And the Tower's most famous non-humans, the legendary ravens, are soaking up the limelight too.
Hello, Poppy.
But not everyone is out and about yet.
Where are you? Hello. What's this? You going to come out?
3 ravens, Poppy, Jubilee and Melina, have been kept inside their cages for the morning.
Hello, Melina. Hello, Jubilee.
Raven Master Chris Scaife
You going to come out? You want to come out?
is about to let them out for the first time since the Tower reopened its doors.
We've been in lockdown many weeks now, and I haven't seen any members of the public around at all as well. So I'm concerned at how they're going to interact with the public.
The 3 troublesome birds have reputations for petty larceny.
These are my ravens that do like to try and steal food, so I'm going to keep my eye on them.
In case the ravens are tempted by the sight of picnicking tourists, Chris has waited until after lunchtime before releasing them. First to be let out are Melina and Jubilee.
I'm a little bit sceptical as to what they're going to do. Melina is a bit of a sandwich thief. Come on then, you two. Come on then. Are you ready? Are you ready? All right, don't rush. Go on then, out you go.
Jubilee doesn't waste a second.
You coming out?
But Melina takes some persuading.
Go on then. Go on, young lady, out you go. Go and enjoy the day. There we go.
Finally, it's Poppy's turn.
I am not sure what she's going to do at all. Come on then, young lady. Are you ready? Are you ready to come out? Are you going to behave? Yep. Yeah, good girl. Good girl. Right, have I got something for you?
Chris always has a treat on hand to tempt reluctant ravens out of their cage.
Yep. Ah, you missed that one. No, you missed it. Ready again? Yep, you got it. Go on. Right, go and play them. Go and find something to do. Come on. I'm going to step back, remove myself from the ravens, and just keep an eye on them for the next couple of hours and see how they do. I'm more concerned how they do with the members of the public, actually.
While the ravens readjust to public life, Tracy Borman is heading to the Devereux Tower, to the northwest of the fortress. From the roof, she has a bird's eye view of Tower Hill, the place where on the 15th of July 1685, huge crowds gathered on specially built grandstands to watch what would become one of the tower's most gory executions, the beheading of the Duke of Monmouth. The Duke's crime had been to lead a rebellion against his uncle, King James II.
It was common for a victim to pay their executioner in the hope of securing a swift and painless death. And that's exactly what Monmouth did with his executioner, a man named Jack Ketch. But sadly, it didn't do a bit of good. It took 5 blows to finally sever his head. After the first blow, horrifically, Monmouth was still conscious and turned round to look up at his executioner.
Legend has it that the executioner, Jack Ketch, even used his knife to cut through the Duke's neck.
Well, you can only imagine the sheer horror of the scene. Monmouth's execution soon became the stuff of legends. Everyone was talking about it, and it even inspired a deck of cards. I have a replica here, and each card tells a different part of the story. This is one of my favourites because it shows the tower there in the background. And then finally, on this card, the grisly beheading over there on Tower Hill. There's poor old Monmouth, and there's Jack Ketch, the bungling executioner.
Executions on Tower Hill continued to draw vast crowds for another 60 years after Monmouth's death. The last beheading took place in 1747. As for James II, the Monmouth Rebellion was a stark warning of the threats facing his reign. He quickly began expanding his army in case of another revolt, and to ensure he came to no harm, James even ordered himself a brand new suit of armour. It was delivered to the Tower in 1686, the year after Monmouth was beheaded. And it's still here today. It sits amongst more ancient armour as part of the Royal Armouries collection in the White Tower. The keeper of Tower Armouries, Bridget Clifford, is taking a closer look.
You'll see that he's got an awful lot less armour than some of his predecessors. That's basically because technology has moved on. The new threat on the battlefield, which is being refined, is firearms and gunpowder.
Constructed of steel, James's armour consists of a helmet known as a lobster pot, breast and back plates, and critically, an elbow gauntlet to protect his left arm.
This left hand is guiding the horse, and as a cavalryman, it's really rather important to be in control of your horse.
King James paid £100 for his highly decorated suit of armour. This was 50 times the price of armour of a regular soldier. The most elaborate decoration is the royal coat of arms on the face guard.
So he's peering out from behind a unicorn with a very unfortunately placed horn and a lion. As king, you've got to be magnificent.
But despite all his military preparations, James's reign came to a sudden end in 1688, when he was deposed by his own daughter Mary and his son-in-law, the Protestant William of Orange. James was the last Catholic to sit on the throne. Britain has had a Protestant monarch ever since. While James's armour has pride of place in the Royal Armouries collection, his brother, King Charles II's legacy, can be seen all round the tower. It is said that when Charles was told the kingdom would fall if the ravens ever left, he decreed that the birds should forever be protected. Ravens are territorial, and all the birds have their favourite haunts. For sandwich-stealing husband and wife Jubilee and Melina, it's the eastern side of the White Tower. But Raven Master Chris Scaife knows that snacking tourists make easy pickings for these partners in crime. So he's taken a few precautions.
As you can see, in this general area, I've had the benches and the bins removed for safety reasons. Obviously, you know, they're going to go through the rubbish, so we've kept that down to a minimum around this area, and we want people to picnic here, but kind of a little bit further on from this territory.
And in case the tower's very own Bonnie and Clyde are planning a crime spree, Chris hopes a few treats will help them resist temptation.
What's this? What's this? Would you like this? Of course, they're ravens. They will do whatever they want to do, but at least I'm here to make sure they're not doing anything naughty. I love watching them. I'm just fascinated by how they love to play. I'm just going to put out some biscuit bait. I can see the pigeons are coming down, so hopefully the ravens will take heed. I can see that Poppy is down there.
Thankfully, Poppy seems to be taking no notice of the crowds.
They are behaving themselves to raven standard, which is fairly low, to be honest with you, but actually they're doing really, really well. I'm really pleased, actually, at the moment. You know, it's the first day, it's early days. In the coming weeks, it'll be interesting to see how that changes, but I've got to be on the ball and keeping an eye on it.
Coming up, Tracy reveals why one king locked his wife outside the tower.
This is just astonishing. His own wife is just a few feet away. She's in mortal danger.
And one of the most important days in the tower's history is coming to an end.
Today's been very tiring. My feet ache like never before.
It's the first time in months that visitors have been allowed inside the tower. An impregnable fortress made up of ancient buildings, defensive walls and fortifications. Now, Chief Curator Tracy Borman is unpicking the story of the king who did more to fortify the tower than anyone else, Henry III. It was 800 years ago when Henry, one of England's longest reigning kings, ordered a massive expansion of the tower's defences. The huge project took decades to complete.
I have an artist's impression here of what the tower would have looked like during Henry's building works, and you can see several new towers under construction. And where I'm standing now, it's actually the inner curtain wall today, but then it would have been right next to the Thames, the outer wall.
When the fortress started life under William the Conqueror, it consisted of little more than the White Tower and a protective wall. In an extraordinary feat of engineering, Henry built massive new walls on 3 sides and surrounded the tower with a moat. He then set about building 10 new defensive towers. But for all the attention Henry paid to its fortifications, he also wanted his tower to be a palace fit for a king. A clue to how it may have looked back in Henry III's time lies inside the Wakefield Tower.
This really is one of the most breathtaking spaces in the whole tower. It's not really what you expect for the tower. I remember being really struck when I first came in here, and you really get a sense of the luxury that would have existed in here in the 1200s. He really wanted to impress everyone who came here. One of my favourite features is this beautiful ceiling with its elaborate brickwork, and then beneath it, a real clue to the luxury and status of this room is the fireplace and the sheer size of it. It's colossal. Clearly it would have given out a lot of heat and a lot of comfort, and they're two things that not many people in the tower got to enjoy. The Wakefield Tower really gives us a glimpse into Henry's passion for art and architecture.
Henry's expansion of the tower's defences proved to be a good investment. His reign continued to be plagued by conflict with rebel barons, and in 1263 the enemy forces marched on London. Henry and his wife, Queen Eleanor, retreated to the safest place they knew, the Tower of London.
Henry's new defences held the king was safe inside these walls, but the same wasn't true of his wife, Queen Eleanor.
The Queen had had enough of being holed up in the fortress. She decided to make a break for it. She took to the river in a boat, but was soon spotted by rioting Londoners and forced back to the tower and the protection of her husband, the king.
Eleanor arrived here at the Riverside Gate, just below where I'm standing now, and demanded to be let back in. But fearing that the rebels too would rush in if he opened the gates, Henry refused. Now, this is just astonishing. His own wife is just a few feet away. She's in mortal danger. Henry liked to pretend that he was this great chivalrous knight devoted to his wife. But when the pressure was on, he showed his true colours.
Both Henry and Eleanor survived the conflict, and although the remainder of his reign was troubled by unrest, Henry left a lasting legacy.
The works that he began here at the Tower really helped to transform it into the fortress that we see today.
It's been an historic day for the Tower. After 3.5 months of lockdown, the public are finally back and the Tower is selling tickets. Yeoman warder Chris Clausen has spent a grueling 8 hours on his feet.
Today's been very tiring, actually. So we're used to standing up. We haven't been used to standing up for the last few months. Obviously, my feet ache like never before.
Where does the water come from?
So from the Thames. There's always something missing when there's no public. And just one person through that gate. Welcome to the Tower. Thank you for coming back. The whole concept of the Tower changes. He's the only person ever to have stolen the crown jewels, and he got away with it. I just love the fact that they wanted to be here as much as we wanted to be here, and they just wanted to see something that was iconic, something that was London, something that made them feel safe. But remember, it was a story. Okay, so nobody really knows if it's true or not. Opening day has definitely been a success, mainly because we opened the gates and people were here. There's always going to be that thought that, well, if we open, will people come? And today's proven that people always come to the Tower.
Next time, the 411th Yeoman warder takes his place at the Tower.
Every little boy dreams of living in a castle.
And we discover just how cruel King Henry VIII could be.
Conditions for poor prisoners were terrible. You wouldn't want to be here for very long.
And that's Inside the Tower of London, new next Wednesday at 8. On Monday at 9, we're back on the tracks with the new series of Paddington Station 24/7, with the staff coping with the new normal after lockdown earlier this year.
It's 8 o'clock in the morning on the 10th of July 2020. A day which will mark the end of an extraordinary period in the Tower's 1,000-year history. In 2 hours' time, the fortress will finally throw open its doors to visitors after 112 consecutive days in lockdown. For Deputy Governor Debbie Whittingham, it couldn't come soon enough.
Right, well, today's the day. Today's opening day, and I'm just a bit nervous. It's one of those mornings that we've never experienced before. You know, to have no visitors and now to pray for lots of visitors. It's, yeah, very apprehensive, but also really exciting.
The COVID pandemic forced the Tower to close for the longest period since the Second World War, 75 years ago.
But in the grand scheme of things, the Tower has been here nearly 1,000 years. It's had blips blips in its existence that it's overcome, and we've overcome another one. So when I see those visitors on the hill getting ready to come in through the gates, it would be very hard not to go and hug the first person that comes through. It really will. Morning, Chief.
Good morning, Mum. How are
To
you?
celebrate the occasion, Debbie and her team are planning a very special reopening ceremony.
You're very early.
I am very early, aren't I?
I'm
I couldn't
shocked.
sleep.
Helping Debbie with the last-minute preparations is Chief Yeoman Warder Pete McGowan.
So, Chief, everybody's in place, knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I met the musicians this morning, saw the sergeant, who walked through exactly what we're going to do.
To welcome